You are now listening to No Free Drinks, the Not Your Ordinary Dating, Relationships, and Sex Advice podcast.
Join me, Wesley, your Keeps It Real co-host.
We were going out, I would say steady for like 6 to 8 months. We just abruptly stopped having sex. So why are we not getting freaky? Like, what the f*** is going on? So she's like, no, because I've renewed my faith in God.
I know how I am. Like, I'm not going to get no cheeks. I'm going to cheat on you. Brock, your Knows-It-All co-host.
And then my go-to hookup one has always and will forever be Tinder. Like, it's just like in the bathroom, like, cool, I got these 5-10 minutes, like just thumb game strong, like.
And Lena D, your No Chill co-host.
Oh, so do you go down on women? And there were a few men that said, no, like, I don't believe in that. And then I was like, oh, well, I don't believe in you, so we should probably end this.
God. That's harsh as
I mean, it's harsh as to say you're not going to eat my pussy out.
Join us every Wednesday for
all type of societal norms being turned upside down.
And welcome back to No Free Drinks. This is Lena D, and I'm joined by my co-host.
Hey, it's Wesley.
Hey guys, it's Brock.
And in the spirit of the new year, obviously we started with a toolkit around how to make sure that your dating life goes better and that you're winning in 2018.
Tiger blood.
The other one that we wanted to talk about, and like, we were all about having like the tough conversations. So it's like this time we're going to give you...
It's me. That's dumb shit.
Scapegoat.
I'm always the scapegoat. I'm the hated one here. Everybody's like, why you say some dumb shit, Wesley? I'm like, well, but like we always have tough conversations, though. It's just that you tend to be a little bit more jokey about it,
vocal about it. In
yeah, that's true.
A joking sense, which some people may be rubbed the wrong way, but I think at the end of the day, it's still funny.
I don't give a freak.
And I think we have to have humor in our lives sometimes in order, like, not to take ourselves too seriously. But this is going to be an episode all around, what happens if shit just crashes and burns? Like, are you prepared? And in the not the last episode, but episode 26, the barbershop, where we had all the guy talk going on, there was a part of the conversation where Brock and Wesley, along with our guest, talked about prenups, which I felt like just came out of nowhere because we never talked about prenups before.
Prenups.
So to touch on that topic, Brock, you were in this conversation. Yeah. So like, what did you take away from it? And like, how did you feel when you guys were having that conversation?
Yeah. Wesley just came in with like all the facts and the little nuggets. I think the biggest thing that I didn't know, so I had always assumed prenups had covered custodial agreement of said children, which I found out that it does not. Mm-mm. So I'm just like, holy shit. And then it doesn't cover like behavioral clauses. It's just simply this split of the financial assets that you had before the marriage and then you acquired during, and especially if you have like a family heirloom and stuff like that. So it's just interesting, like how it's kind of like twofold, how like limited it's covered, but then also like how intricate and how laid out you have to plan it. Because it sucks, but I mean, divorce rate is 50%. So you literally is a flip of a coin. So I mean, for those of us who are risk averse, like you just prenup makes a lot of fucking sense. Just make sure like we're both in a good headspace right now. Let's just get this shit on pen and paper.
Yeah, like not everything's forever nowadays, so you got to be prepared.
50%. Remember that, ladies and gentlemen. 50% is the rate of divorce rates in the United States of America.
Yeah.
Scary.
Yes. And the thing is, it's like most people don't think about it, but a prenup is like such an official thing because you're getting married. It's like a contract, and we're going to talk a lot about that later on in the episode today. But what's hard about it is that, it's kind of like a way to protect yourself. So you're being prepared if the worst case scenario happens.
Oh, yeah.
And what most people don't talk about, and I would say that even Wesley and I have been guilty of this, is like, well, what if you're not in a married relationship, but you're living together, or you decide to move in together? So like, do you have Have you had those conversations of what happens when, if things don't work out, you guys have to go your separate ways?
Oh, I'm getting the TV. Oh, you better believe it.
Oh, Jesus. We haven't even gotten into it. But like some people aren't prepared to have that conversation. Like our appliances or electronics here, like they don't have owners yet.
I'm sorry, what?
That's a conversation that we would need to have.
Excuse me?
Wesley about to get Sharpie and start writing on everything.
Well, I'm just getting ready right now.
Mine.
But I mean, that's the whole point of what we're talking about is like we're going to give you advice on something that, you know, we're going to probably go after this and start doing some of this stuff, even though we do have some other things in place. But some people don't even think about this stuff. So we wanted to dive deeper into, okay, yeah, prenups are important. What is that if you're in that stage of getting married? But if you're not at a marriage stage, but you have been with someone for a long time and you are about to move in together, these are the things that you should start thinking about. So that's what our episode is going to focus on today.
Yeah. So, hey guys, it's Brock again. So I'll kick things off. So kind of like the most basic level Leon D touched upon is if you're essentially unmarried, but you're living together. And as of the last U.S. Census in 2010, there was close to 8 million people that fell in that bucket, which is a huge fucking amount of people. And most people don't have anything in writing. It's kind of, hey, we live together, all roses and dandelions, shit smelling nice, and just hope it kind of works out.
Nice. Shit actually smells.
Fucking shit smell like perfume out here, and just fucking blows up. It's like, oh, what's happening? And kind of like a way to get ahead of that is what's called a cohabitation agreement. So essentially, you guys are dating, and if you guys do want to get married in the future, a big step is living together. Because
you draft one for us. I make sure I get this TV on my name.
That's what I'm saying.
First
we don't
bullet
have
point.
some of this stuff.
You guys can write one after this.
I have receipts that I paid for everything, so you're not getting that TV.
Ooh, receipts. Oh, veto. Yeah. So you essentially you draft this document that'll say in the event of a split, these are the assets. So stuff like TVs, stuff like pets, debt. So like utilities. So if the cell phone bills are one person's name, cables on the other person's name, any property you guys might have acquired together or separately but one person's name. So pretty much just how we splitting stuff up, although we're not married, but we've been together for a significant amount of time, that we've accumulated stuff along the way. So because you guys are happy now, things are just moving and grooving. Just once shit hits the fan, like it's just unfortunately me. So.
Shit better not hit the fan. I'm just saying.
I mean, we've been
banking. TV's gonna be for me.
We've been banking. I mean, okay, fine. I'm just gonna take the timeshare then.
Stuff like timeshare. There we go.
That's mine. That's still mine.
No,
it's on both our names. When we get them tax returns, it's not just you on there. It's me too.
So obviously, it can get dicey.
It can get dicey. So that's kind of like the first basic level. If you're just simply living together but not married, the second level, which Lee and Dia talk about, is if you're in a legally recognized domestic partnership.
And we are.
Yeah, so we actually
certificate and everything.
We do have some expertise in that, so we have been prepared enough to at least have a domestic partnership between us, which it's actually a very interesting agreement. Not all states, and actually let me define it first. A domestic partnership is defined as an interpersonal relationship where two individuals live together and they share domestic life, but they're not married. So whenever you're in a domestic partnership, it is commonly required that you're not married to each other, but you also haven't been married to somebody else.
Mm.
So that's a big thing. If you're like in a situation where you've left your marriage partner, whether it's your wife or your husband, and then you find somebody else and like you start living together, like you couldn't be in a domestic partnership because you have previously been married. So once upon a time, there were 28 states that recognized domestic partnerships.
Hey.
And each state had their own stipulations of what was considered within the benefits of a domestic partnership versus what didn't apply as a benefit. But now we've actually found out that there's only 11 states and there are a select handful of cities that acknowledge domestic partnerships. So if you are in a long-term relationship where you have been living with your significant other and you're not at the point where you want to get married, but there's certain benefits that domestic partnership gives you, it's something to consider, but to also do the research as to what state that you both live in, like what they require for you to be in a domestic partnership, what they cover, what they don't cover. So Wesley and I are in one within the city of New York, which is interesting because New York City recognizes domestic partnerships. New York State does not necessarily recognize domestic partnerships.
They do not.
So at a state level, the 11 states that are covered are California and Colorado, DC, Hawaii, Maine, Maryland, New Jersey, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, and Wisconsin.
A lot of the weed states.
New Jersey about to be one of them.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting, even because when we did the research, we only looked at New York City because we were living in New York City, so it made sense, and not realizing that there's so many differences even between what New York City recognizes versus, like, even if we lived like somewhere else, like in Rockland County, like where our domestic partnership wouldn't be recognized anymore.
We just two motherfuckers living together.
Yeah. So
That's
it's really interesting and you really need to understand it for yourself. So in the interest of time, I'm going to give you a little overview of what a domestic partnership benefit is in terms of a city perspective. I'm not going to get into the intricacies for the other 11 states, but if you're curious, I encourage you to research. So the partnership agreement, the way that it works in New York City, is that both of them need to be living in the same spot, and that needs to be within one of the 5 boroughs of New York City. And you actually have to go to the city clerk's office to register. And under city law, like I said, you have to be living within New York City. Both of you have to be at least 18 years old. You have to make sure that you've never been married before, and you have to make sure that you have the proper paperwork. So you're going to have to show your driver's license, a passport, anything around your birth certificate to prove your identity, or if you're have like U.S. immigration cards, like all that stuff applies. So like they verify your identity and who you are. And it's pretty simple. You fill out the application and they give you a little certificate that says that you're in a domestic partnership as of whatever date. And the benefits that gives you is if you're a New York City employee, then your benefits can actually be extended to that other person that you're in the partnership with, which is interesting because my employer is based in New Jersey and they don't recognize the fact that I'm in a domestic partnership within New York City. So like they wouldn't let me extend my benefits to Wesley, but Wesley's benefits can extend to me just because of those stipulations.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I work in New York City.
So it's interesting because then you're like, oh, okay, well, there is a benefit that the benefits still apply even though we're not in like a legally married situation. But it's also case by case because New Jersey technically does have domestic partnership laws, but they don't honor the New York City law. So like they require something different. Some of the other benefits, which I guess if you were applying for New York City housing, then like you don't have to be married for that person to be able to live with you. So if you qualify under like your specific requirements that are required by that application, then by law, then the person that's in a domestic partnership with you qualifies as well.
Nice.
And then in terms of visitation, like if you're in a hospital or if you were put in jail for whatever thing, like that person is considered part of your family.
That's right. Conjugal visits, guys. Conjugal visits.
Get them cheeks.
Well, hopefully Wesley would never be in jail or myself.
I'm far from jail.
So we would never
My occupation
to,
allows me to be as far from jail as possible. Let's just put it that way.
So hopefully we would never have to like pull upon those. But what's not included is that you're not eligible for state income tax benefits that if you were in a legally married sort of relationship that you would get in terms of claiming each other. Like we still file income taxes separately.
Yep.
So that's what's not included. But every state is going to vary. Some states think of domestic partnerships as like a civil union, and it's just different. So you need to look into it on your own to see if it's worth it for you. And at least it does, because it is a legally binding recognition of a union. It's also something that you can dissolve, and it's actually easier to dissolve a domestic partnership than it is to dissolve like a marriage. So like we'll talk about divorces too. So that's kind of what a domestic partnership is. Obviously, for us, it's been beneficial from like a healthcare perspective. You can save on cost a little bit. And God forbid if there were any other things that either happened with housing, we're fortunate enough not to like deal with that stuff. But New York City does cover like some of the other benefits as well.
Yep.
Nice. Okay, so now we're gonna ramp it up a little bit. So now, what happens if there's no cohabitation agreement and your state or city does not recognize domestic partnership? You're fucked, pretty much. If shit just hits the fan.
Yeah.
How can you potentially mitigate how fucked you are?
I mean, it's not going to be pretty, but if
I still want this TV though,
if you didn't do the due diligence before,
and the timeshare.
you're going to have to. Is Wesley speaking? I didn't hear what you said.
The timeshare.
Take a seat.
I'm already sitting down, by the way.
Take another seat.
Several
All the
seats.
But I think it's like these like shitty scenarios. You actually have to think through them.
Yeah, and then so I'll just walk through a couple. So pretty much like, so if you guys, so obviously you guys are now living together, you signed a lease. So number one, you want to make sure that lease or mortgage you guys took on is one that you both took on, not just one person's name, because now it's
I'm not that responsible.
Yeah, then it's just going to be against your credits. And now if you guys break up, like it's not as much as of a legal obligation to pay that back. So make sure both your names are on the lease or the mortgage. Number two, it's very, very, very attractive to, hey, it's now two people paying one lease or one mortgage. This is ball out on an apartment. But you don't want to necessarily do that because
you got to pay for that.
You got to pay for the shit if shit hits the fan. So you still want the rent or mortgage to be something that if stuff does fall out, you can afford it on your own. So keep that in mind. Another thing is, okay, so let's say we break up. Like, obviously, we don't want to live together, but it's a huge financial burden. What happens with that? So I've known people to just both move out right away, sublet the place if it's a desirable location / apartment. You can Airbnb for a little bit. You can break the lease. I've known friends that have kind of done we rotate between the couch and the bed. I've had friends who still sleep in the same bed, which is awkward as shit. Even more awkward if it takes months and months and months, and then one of you starts dating or fucking around. Like, what are the rules with that? Man. So it could just get ugly real quick. I've known people who they've had like a 2-bedroom, one room is an office, one's a bedroom, but now one person moves out, turns the office into another bedroom, gets a roommate. So that's another option. So those are like stuff to like kind of mitigate the falling out that'll happen if there's no type of legal agreement in place. Another thing, smaller but still important, are utilities. So you have your cable, you have your hot water, electricity, and you have stuff like your cell phone bill. And then, so I actually have an interesting story about cell phone bill. So in my younger days, so this is college.
Over a cell phone bill, dog?
Over a cell phone bill. Hey, make a minimum wage out here.
Shit.
So, also a quick tidbit before this.
Was it Sprint?
It was a Sprint. Actually, I don't think it was Sprint. No, it wasn't Sprint.
Okay.
Quick tidbit.
It was a lot of money then.
It was balling out here. A quick tidbit. Like, you want to, like, a lot of times, especially in more expensive cities like New York or San Francisco or Boston, your enticed by the financial savings, but you want to do it because it's the next step you both see in trying to see if this is going to work out long term. Not trying to save money on rent, or hey, I'm trying to save money on cell phone bill.
Right.
I was young. I was like, oh, trying to save money on cell phone bill. All right, so back to the story. So it says junior year of college, stayed in kind of like a delayed high school sweetheart. So we've known each other for like 7 years, somewhat long distance. I was going to school outside of Boston. She was going to school back home in New York. And then, so this is back when like everything had like a cap on it. Like you had like certain number of minutes, certain number of texts. Now everything's just fucking unlimited.
Yeah.
So I think I had
400 minutes.
Yeah, it's like 450 minutes. So I think I had AT&T. She had T-Mobile.
Oh yeah, you called me after 9.
Yeah, the free anytime minutes after
Yeah.
9. So of course she didn't fucking abide by that. So it's like
hell no.
just eating up all these minutes.
Oh, yeah.
So cell phone bills again ridiculous. I'm like, this is just fucking stupid. And so in college, so like just making minimum wage working at like the bookstore on campus and the library and the coffee shop. So I'm like, this is fucking adding up. Like, I had known you for 7 years. Like, I trust you. So then we get a joint family plan on my name.
Oh, shit.
So it's on my name. So the bill goes down. It's now we're not going over minutes, and family plans. One family plan for 2 people is a lot cheaper than 2 individual plans. I'm like, this makes sense.
Yeah.
So then it's probably like 6 months in the relationship. She stopped paying. Like,
What?
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, what?
she stopped paying.
Man.
So I'm like, so things are already a little dicey, and she's not paying. So I think at this point we're on a break, and she's not paying. So 3 months go by, college student paying for fucking family plan for 2 of us. So I'm like, listen, like, I'm not your sugar daddy. Like, I'm not paying for this fucking cell phone bill. My spiteful ass. So I cancel her line.
You didn't tell her you were.
I told her every month. I was like, bills due. As you know, you fucking using the fucking cell phone, so you know shit is not paying for itself.
Yeah, it really isn't.
I don't know. Of course, as soon as I cancel it, she's like, how could you do this? Oh, no. Fuck, I forgot a poor part of the story. I canceled it. Then it got added back somehow.
What the fuck?
So I
Did
called.
you make her a master account holder?
No. So that's why I'm like confused as shit. So I call AT&T, and then I'm not trying to like snitch or anything. So I like giving them like hypotheticals. So I'm like, hey, like I canceled it. Like, what if like such and such would cancel one line? What would someone need to reactivate said line? Mm-hmm. And the customer service rep goes, your social security number. I was like, oh, this bitch know my social security number. How do you know my social security number? So I cancel again, and there's somewhere you could do it where it's like permanent.
Yeah.
It was permanent. Now this is when she calls me. She's like, hi, could you do that? I'm like, listen, we're not together. I gave you 3 fucking months. Like, you're just being ridiculous right now. And then she's like, oh, I'm going to pay you. Oh, so that was other part of the problem. She kept saying, I'm going to pay you, I'm going to pay you, I'm going to pay you. I'm like, what would you do if it was your cell phone bill, your name? You can't just fucking email AT&T like, well, I'm going to pay you next month. Like, it's not the way
That's not how it works.
shit works.
These corporations
Yeah.
work.
So I cancel it, and then she still wasn't trying to pay. So then I took her to small claims court here in New York.
Oh, damn.
So it's kind of interesting. So when you file that, it's become public, and then the TV shows they try to look for interesting shit.
Yeah, that's my cousin had that because there was a lady that was right
on
there sitting down because she had to file a small claims thing, and there was a lady sitting there for like some kind of divorce court or whatever, and my cousin was telling me the story or whatever, what happened, why she had to file small claims. But the story was so juicy. The lady was just like, I didn't mean to pry, but your story would be great on such and such TV show. I was like,
that's crazy.
don't you fucking do it.
So
you make all those black folks look bad right now. Don't you fucking do it.
So I wanted to do it. So I think I had got
Oh, shit.
I had got mail from 2 of them. It was I think it was People's Court And it was some new, I swear it was some new hood shit. It was like street court, ready to like
Street court.
ready to like have it in the middle in the street outside.
I think what they do like is that they pay the settlement already, but they like kind of make it seem like they're really going through the adjudication process.
Yeah, so this is why I want to do it. So in the letter, they pretty much outline it like. So there's a benefit of both parties,
Right.
So I'm the plaintiff. I'm suing ex-girlfriend.
Right.
If I win, they pay.
Yeah.
They pay me whatever she would have had to pay me. So she doesn't have to pay anything.
Yeah.
If I lose, I still get paid an appearance fee of like $100.
Yeah.
The problem is you both have to agree. I agreed. She didn't agree because it would have been embarrassing for her. So we didn't see each other for like months. So then you get your court date. So like I'm still in college outside of Boston. So I had to go home for like a day to do this. It's like quick as
That's
shit.
a lot. That's like so much
Yeah,
time.
because they go through arbitration.
Yeah, so
really.
pretty much, yeah. So you go like downtown Brooklyn.
Yeah.
It's a whole bunch of credit card. It's pretty much like one lawyer for each credit card company, like just suing people who owe shit.
Basically.
So then we go there, you kind of wait for your number, go to arbitration. So I remember it's like this older black lady. So of course I got all my shit ready. Got my screenshots of text where she's going to be like, I'm going to pay you back. I got the story, the timeline ready to pop in. So we both explain what happened. So I tell her, man, this is what happened. We dating for XYZ months, decided to do a family plans under my name. We agreed we would split it on said date. After 3 months, like we're both college students, like I'm not paying for your fucking cell phone plan. And then she was like, she just didn't pay it. And then so she goes, okay, thank you. Goes to the ex-girlfriend. She goes, why didn't you pay it? She was like, her only thing was that, I just couldn't afford it. And she was like, so that's it. You just couldn't afford it. You just thought it was okay not to pay him. I was like, yeah. So in my head, I'm just like laughing. And then
Because they don't do judgment on the spot.
No, they did.
Yeah, they did?
Yeah. So I won. So she had to pay me the 3 months that she owed me. And then we split the cancellation fee. So I got back to 3 months and then half whatever cancellation fee was. I think it was like, whatever, it's like 200, 300 something bucks. Shit. And then you also have to pay by a certain date. Otherwise it like goes against your like credit or something like that. So it's an amount and a date in like 2 weeks or something like that. Yeah. So one pretty quick. I was like, just avoid this shit. Could have put you in a payment plan. Like I'm not. You knew my social security number somehow. I'm not fucking paying your fucking cell phone bill.
That's the creepiest part.
Yeah.
Creepy.
Like she's been out, like I guess my dorm room, or whatever. But like, when the fuck did you find that? Like,
I mean, she was looking.
Jesus.
I mean, are you sure you don't have like a second identity out there? Like,
I do have identity checked through my credit card, so I don't as of now. But she might be waiting.
Yeah. Thanks.
I'm wait 20 years.
Thanks, Equifax. Thanks for selling my information. It's like, thanks for getting hacked.
that's insane.
Yeah. So another way, if you can't like divide shit up, is there's small claims court, which I think is under a certain dollar amount, and then silver court, which is above that, which is actual judge. Yeah. Wow. And then so besides like lease or mortgage or utilities, also have loss of health insurance, which Leading Dia walk us through.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a big one. So, like, I mean, I just talked about how Wesley actually covers my health insurance. I save through it because I don't have to get a duplicate one, and then it's just easier. But if it were the case that Wesley and I said part ways, I couldn't be on his plan anymore.
I'm canceling that shit.
You can't just go on and cancel it. First
you
of all,
really can't.
There is a process for it.
There's a big process to it.
So as soon
it only takes 1 day, though.
No, but yeah, it is all around 1 day. So obviously, if you're unmarried and you're in some sort of domestic partnership, there's around I think it's like 9,000 or so people that fall under that domestic partner health benefit insurance. So let's say if all those people split up, like that's a lot of people without health insurance. So you have to at least know the right process. And it shouldn't just be like, oh, like drop the person and don't tell them. Like it actually is a process. So in case if you were covered by your significant other's insurance plan and then all of a sudden they're taking you off As soon as they take you off, that's when you need to go to your company insurance plan and tell them, as of this date, I'm no longer covered under my previous domestic partner, or whatever the situation is. I've lost coverage, so now I need to activate my healthcare coverage. So that's the best case situation, is where you've had the option to have your own health insurance through your employer, and then you just have to activate it, and like they go through the paperwork and stuff. You just have to call like your hotline or file the paperwork through your HR portal. But you have to do it on the spot, because then you risk running a lapse in your health coverage, and you know that can result in fines and your taxes, and you want to avoid that.
Not anymore.
Oh yeah, they took that out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they took that out.
Oh, that came out?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
individual mandate is gone.
Damn. Okay. Well,
So you good.
but I mean, it could still, even if it's not your taxes, it could still be detrimental, because let's say if you have an accident and
true.
you haven't reported it, then you're going to have to pay out of pocket, because you're not covered under any plan. Like,
Also
you've
true.
been taking off of your partners, and like yours, you didn't call yours to proactively tell them that you need coverage because of like a life-changing event. And that's what they're usually called, is like life-changing events.
Right.
So you can report that, you can get reinstated. It's fine, even if it's not during your annual enrollment cycles. When it becomes trickier is when you're not employed, or you're like, I don't know, a contractor or working for yourself. So in that case, like, you have to look into more expensive options like Cobra, but you should familiarize yourself with that now if that is your situation. I mean, it's all a matter of situation. So if you're not somebody that's employed by a bigger company that gives you health insurance, you should know like what your options should be. Just don't rely on the fact that you have a plan with your significant other, because you never know. Like, you need to be quick on your feet and knowing what your options are. And the other thing too is like, you can also just sign up for yourself. Like, there are other health plan coverages that are out there, or there were, who knows, like, that could be
ACA.
changing. But just know what your options are, like whether it's Cobra or something else. Like, you always want to be informed. And why this is important is because initially I had thought, oh, well, it's probably easier to just get the health plan under my employer and I can put Wesley on it. And then that's when I found out these whole regulations around like, well, he's not by New Jersey state law. Like, you guys have to be married in order for you to give him coverage. So you always have to ask. So you like have to explore your options, whether things are good or whether things are bad, and then have a backup plan.
Oh, yeah. And then, so we went over leases, mortgages, utilities, health insurance, and one that we've kind of touched upon several times is high-end stuff, such as...
Yeah, because Wesley wants to take everything.
TV timeshare.
So TV, timeshare, pets. So...
No, you can keep
You can
Hera.
have Hera.
You can have Hera. Good.
She loves you more anyway.
So it seems like some pets might be homeless. So what are like options for stuff like that? So obviously the more amicable the breakup is, the easier it is. Different ways is just whoever bought it kind of keeps it, or whoever uses the most keeps it. It kind of gets a little dicey if you both bought it and you both want it. Usually in that case, it would be like, whatever, let's say the TV was $2,000 when we bought it. Now it's maybe worth $500. And so you essentially just buy out the other person if you want to keep it, something like that. Or if you both really, really want it and you can't decide, then maybe you can sell it to a third party, such as a friend, and then split the money you get from that is another way. So yeah, just trying to figure out so many different ways you go about that. But yeah, just essentially deciding who keeps what and then who sells what. And then so a lot of times it does happen. I watch a lot of Judge Judy.
Hey.
You'll move out, whatever, and then you'll take something that clearly didn't belong to you. Don't do that shit. It's illegal. It's just stupid. It's just so easy to just get in trouble with the law with that. So don't take something that doesn't belong to you. In that case, you can do small claims court, civil court, depending on the value of the product. I think the messiest one, and it's one that I definitely recommend doing beforehand, like the TV and stuff like that, you kind of figure out. The timeshare one you might want to figure out beforehand. One I'd probably definitely recommend doing before is pets. So I had a really good friend of mine, I was dating girlfriend at the time for 3 years. They lived together, and they had a dog together. So I think it was technically she bought the dog, but obviously the dog lived with the both of them. And then so they had to decide like who gets the dog. I never had that conversation. It kind of worked out, luckily for him, that some odd reason she didn't want the dog.
Oh, she probably thought that the dog reminded her too much of being with him or something.
Could be. She was kind of fucked in the head. So luckily it worked out because he really wanted a dog, but I thought it was going to be messy because I've been in a place a bunch of times, but it kind of worked out where she didn't really want the dog, so he was able to get the dog. But yeah, that was like best case scenario. But like, what do you do if you both want the fucking dog? And
you can't split it.
Yeah,
in
you can't
half.
split it in half. And it's one dog. Like if it's two, maybe we each get one, but you probably have favorites. So just trying to figure out who gets the dog. I think you should probably try to do beforehand. That's just a messy one that you kind of want to avoid.
Yeah. So, marriage, guys. I'm always a bearer of bad news.
What is that?
What is marriage? Marriage is not only a romantic relationship, but it is also a part of a business relationship as well. Whether you like it or not, when you link up with someone, it's like merging two corporations together. You're merging your debt, your current earnings, current debt, future earnings, and future debt, potentially merging it together. So how would you actually break all that up once a marriage goes south? Like I said in the beginning of this podcast recording, is that 50% of United States marriages end in a divorce. So
that's the first one. I think it goes up to like 70% by like your second or third. Like
yeah.
Fucking shit show.
Yeah, like it gets even shittier as like you would think that a person would have learned once. Like, don't. It's not for you. This shit
get
ain't
worse
for
at
you.
it.
Yeah, the odds get worse. This ain't Hunger Games, man. Look, you're not gonna win. Like I think that's another thing too. Human beings seem to think that they're always the exception to the rule and not the rule.
Yeah.
But I'll go through some pros and cons of premarital. Not premarital.
Premarital.
A prenuptial agreement. I'll go through. Well, it's actually really called a premarital agreement. But
it is.
yes, it is. But
We'll premarital always makes me think of sex.
Wow.
Of course, indeed.
Yeah. It's gonna be reading time. So just bear with me. We'll go through the pros and cons of it, and then we'll go through some things like alimony and how that works.
And I think this is important because I think when people start thinking about marriage, or at least friends that have been very excited about marriage, all they talk about is the wedding.
This is what I'll say. Like, just an unofficial census, I find that a lot. I find that most of my lady friends tend to shy against it, and like half the guys that I know shy against it, which to me is weird because it's one agreement for two people.
It's hard to get consensus on it.
Yeah, like, and it's really hard because it's just like, it's not like you have two separate agreements. If you don't like what's in the agreement, you go back and you say, I don't like this, change this up, or take this out and put this in. You have all the choices in the world, but that's besides the point. We'll get to that later. One of the pros is that a premarital agreement can protect the inheritance rights of children and grandchildren from a previous marriage. If you have your own business or professional practice, a premarital agreement can protect that interest so that the business or practice is not divided and subject to the control or involvement of your former spouse upon divorce. This goes back to the whole future worth thing, right? You have a business. You have a business from before the marriage. You establish the business. Then you get married or whatever, but for some reason it doesn't work out. You separate. You don't want that other person's hands in your business. Yeah. I personally think that's not fair to like put future earnings on something that you don't know about in the future. And it's me personally.
No, yeah, and it's crazy. As I remember, a grad school professor He's big on prenups, and he's like, yeah. Let's say the example he gave us was guy in medical school and young lady get married, get divorced. So he's in medical school, hasn't done residency, hasn't been a doctor yet, but the alimony is based on his future earnings. So he may never fully become a doctor. Hopefully he does, but it's based on the assumption that he will be probably whatever the average doctor salary for his field, and then that's what the alimony is, which is fucking crazy. Like,
Yes.
I didn't even see this money yet. Why are you getting this money now? So it's just fucking crazy.
It's like what was
be.
that Rick Ross and Drake song? B wasn't shooting me. He was shooting with me
in the gym.
Oh yeah.
But this goes to men and women. All jokes aside, like, we may position it towards women, but it's not just women.
I mean, yeah,
it's
there's
not.
like women
It's not. Like,
Halle Berry.
yeah.
like make tons of money.
I'll even position it like
Britney
this:
Spears,
how we
right.
think about like prenups and just marriages in society, right? Janet Jackson was going out with dude for 5 years. In the prenup, it stated that after 5 years, she gets X amount of money. So in the 5th year, she divorced the guy, and I think that by the prenup, she got the money that she was supposed to get. Now, let's flip this on its head. Mary J. Blige was going out with dude. I forget what happened with dude or whatever, but they didn't have a prenup. So he's all in her hands with the future
That's
potential
crazy.
and worth. We don't see the one side, but like all day you hear, oh, well, I can't believe that this guy would do that to Mary J. Blige, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, but Janet's kind of doing the same thing too. So why is he getting chastised more than the other one? Like, aren't they pretty much the same thing? Different sides of the same coin.
I mean, but it's also one had the foresight of the agreement. So regardless of what her intentions were, the dude still agreed to it.
Right.
So
No. When I
Like-
say like he proposed a prenup for Janet's case, and it said in the agreement that after 5 years, after this amount of time that we're married, if we are still married and we just end up just whatever doesn't work out, this is how much you're going to be allotted.
right, but like both of them went in agreeing to it.
Yes, of
Whereas
course.
like in the other one, they didn't even have the foresight to have the conversation.
No.
So it's not that the dude is doing anything. It's just that they were negligent in having a contract in place.
Exactly.
That
Yeah,
would
you're
protect
both
them.
at fault at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll go through another pro. If you plan to give up a lucrative career after the marriage, a premarital agreement can ensure that you'll be compensated for that sacrifice if the marriage does not last. So that goes to like that whole more of the, I guess you would call it like current and future potential. Like if you have a lucrative career, you give that career up to be with said person. If this happens, then what? Right? It's kind of one of those things like, hey, I should kind of be compensated because I'm not really working in my career. It's going to take me a while to get back on my feet. This is how much it should be.
Well, that's all around like the earnings of a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad.
Exactly.
So if for whatever reason the woman has a more successful career and it's better for the dad to be at home taking care of the kids, like
Right.
that's something they have to talk about.
Of course.
But all of those things are like assuming what the future state is. So like a part of it is like having the conversation of what you think your future state is going to be.
Exactly. Another pro is that a premarital agreement can limit the amount of spousal support that one spouse will have to pay the other upon divorce. This goes back to that whole alimony thing. You can negotiate alimony in your prenuptial agreements. Those last two bullets there. So let's go to the cons. One of the cons is the agreement may require you to give up your right to inherit from your spouse's estate when he or she dies. Under the law, you're entitled to a portion of the estate, even if your spouse does not include such a provision in his or her will. Basically saying that if you die, like if an agreement that says that like you're not allowed to get some of my shit, then that's what it is. You're not allowed to get. While that may help some people, because I have seen in weird cases that the husband made so much money or the wife made so much money in this scenario that if this person were to assume the risk and responsibilities of said properties and stuff like that, it would totally tank them when it comes to taxes, especially when you have large properties. Taxes is a huge thing because you buy land outright because you have the money to do it, but it's the taxes that really bury you. So it sometimes can be a blessing in disguise that you don't have to pay taxes and you can just sell the land and just call it a day. So that can be a pro or a con depending on how you see it. Another one is, if you contribute to the continuing success and growth of your spouse's business or professional practice by entertaining clients or taking care of the home, you may not be entitled to claim the share of the increase in value if you agree otherwise in a premarital agreement. Under the laws of many states, this increase in value would be considered divisible marital property. So this situation right now, I like giving examples to these bullets. This situation was actually the one I spoke about in the barbershop episode, where why did they get married to, when they were going through what's called arbitration and mediation in this point, where basically what happened was that they found, I think, $800,000 in a stashed away account. But in Jared's character, she meant to, use it as like, if shit fucking fails, like this is we can survive a little bit. But she never told the husband. And then when they went through digging and finding out that she had this account, it was, put into the whole pot of cash that they had to split up.
Even though it was all her money?
Even though it was all her money.
Damn. Yeah.
Because they never signed a prenup together.
Yeah, it's like you can't. It's just like protection. It's just making sure you're protecting your livelihood in the future.
Right. The last bullet for the con is, a low or non-wage earning spouse may not be able to sustain the lifestyle to which he or she has become accustomed to during the marriage if the agreement substantially limits the amount of spousal support to which that spouse is entitled. So basically going back to the whole alimony thing. Now notice in all my bullets, I never said anything about behaviors that happen. I never said anything about child support. I haven't said it. This is all assets, liabilities, and just future earnings and growth, money. That's it. And there's a reason for that, because that kind of stuff doesn't go into the whole ancillary stuff, which is child support, which is all that other crap that goes along with child support and
that's
kids and
another
stuff.
Animal to talk about.
Right. And when you sign a prenuptial agreement, you have to be cognizant of how you're doing it, because anytime, like if you do it by yourselves, they could be like, oh, you signed it under duress, which you don't want to have happen. So what is better that you do is that if you decide to go into having a premarital arrangement or a prenuptial arrangement, you get a lawyer, your spouse gets a lawyer. They both go through and see like what's good and what's bad about this prenuptial agreement that's been drafted. And then your lawyers and one other person should be witness of you signing it. So that way there isn't anyone that says you signed it under duress. Because if it's proven that you signed it under duress, it's null and void in a divorce and anything can happen. Damn. So you also be cognizant of that. Also, if you try to put child support provisions in the prenuptial agreement, your lawyer should automatically tell you that that's not going to fly, because it's going to null that whole agreement, and then you're still fucked. So you don't.
So like if you try to put in shit that doesn't belong,
your lawyer should tell you it does not belong. It will null the agreement, and you're subject to the laws of whatever kind of divorce that you're
That's
gonna
a good one
through.
to know, because I feel like some people would think, like Brock, you thought that you
I would try to put that shit in,
and then like you wouldn't have been protected at all.
There have been cases, however, where like you're paying someone alimony, but they're paying you child support. That has happened before. As confusing as that sounds, because I understand divorce is one thing, family court is something else too.
Yeah.
That's a different animal entirely. So what you're looking at is like, if you have kids in the mix, you're looking at something really messy, and there are different kinds of divorce that you can go through. that are a lot cleaner than you going through a contested battle with someone.
I mean, divorce, the prenup, I think a lot of people are still, it's like, I feel like the meaning of marriage has been lost. Like the actual meaning of marriage isn't because you're in love. It's a contract because one person's able to provide. And then at one point in time, it was in the woman's benefit to have somebody provide for her because the laws didn't allow her to make a living for herself in the way that a man can make a living for themselves.
Right.
But
alimony laws, you got to understand, they're gender neutral. So if you make more than me,
I know, that's what I'm
cool.
saying. It's like the meaning.
It's all
I think
game.
it's like the meaning of marriage is like romanticized.
Yes.
Whereas it's nobody sits down and talks about my future earning potential is this compared to your future earning potential. So therefore, let's talk about what that means for the two of us.
And I feel like when we talk about prenuptial agreements, it's very downplayed because it's always stigmatized as, oh, like you think that I'm after your money. No. It has nothing to do with that. Because you have to understand, back to my original statement, it's two people signing one agreement, not two separate agreements. So I'm bound by the same agreement as you are. Mm-hmm. So if something happens, then something happens.
Yeah, and the irony is that finances is the number one reason for divorce. So It's like we're not prepared for it, but then it's caught as a leading factor in getting divorced. It's just a vicious cycle. It's shit blowing up in your face.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like sometimes you got to take some of the romantic stuff out. It's kind of like, dealing in business, right? You create a business to make money. This is no different than anything else that you wouldn't be dealing with. And I'm sorry to say it like that, but that's how it is.
Yeah.
You don't want to get caught out there because you don't want someone's hands in your stuff, especially when you're trying to make stuff better for yourself in the future. And you don't know what the future is. The future could be pretty shitty, but naturally the future ends up becoming a lot brighter than you think. And people are, certain people are very short-sighted in seeing that. So, and don't let people downplay and tell you, oh, well, you think that I'm after your money, blah, blah. Don't let people to kind of like guilt trip you into thinking that like this is not the thing for you. If anything, I feel like a prenup takes all that money shit out of the equation. I'm with you because I love you. The money stuff doesn't matter because we'll build it together. Because you're not only, you've merged corporations, so naturally you have to build it together.
But it's like a prenup in a way. It should be drafted in a way that it incentivizes both parties.
Of course.
Like if it's really a true partnership, which is like what a business would be.
Wholeheartedly agree with that.
So, but I don't think most people think of it like that.
No.
It's like, I think for the most part, the prenup is, it depends. I think it depends on like how you value your contributions. Mm-hmm. So if you're career oriented, you've worked at like the earnings that you want to have, you have a lot of savings, like you bring a lot to the table, you're going to be more inclined, I think, to protect that.
Yes.
But in the event where the person doesn't bring a lot to the table, that's where the conversation, I think, is a lot more dicey. Because
right, but then I say this. I say that if you feel like that's the case and you feel like that's what you're worried about the most, then you should get a better mate who will be better suited for that kind of, I guess, criticism than the one that you've got. It's one thing that you're saying about love and stuff, but that's great. But if you're saying that if I want to protect my future stuff, then that either that person will have no problem with signing it or that person will just be out and you'll know that person is not there, that doesn't want, because like when you do the whole, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't like this, I don't like that, that's because that's how it's supposed to be. It's an agreement between you two and you have to be comfortable with the agreement. Like it's not just one person signing it. So
yeah, I feel as though it'd be a lot tougher if the gap between potential earnings is just huge, where just one, like, that just sounds shitty. Like, what do you do when just one spouse makes money? another one's more in a support role and just raising the family. Like, how do you assign a
monetary
value to that? Yeah, like
that's the hard part.
So I make whatever $1 million a year. You stay home, take care of the household, take care of the kids. Like, is that half? Is that 20%? Is that 10%? Like,
you don't really know.
You don't. Like, it's literally just fucking throwing numbers at the board, and it's like, fuck, that gets so dicey.
I mean, like, you can take the role at what is the role? What would you pay somebody else to fill the role that person is doing?
I mean, somebody took out an ad in the city today for $150,000 for a couple to take care of running errands and shit over in the Upper West Side, I think. Yeah, to take care of the kids, and they get to live in the private residence on their own in the penthouse or whatever. $150,000 for a couple to take care of a couple of kids and run some errands and maybe cook some food from time to time.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's people like that's their occupation. Like, they're either cleaning the home or they're like full-time, like, au pairs. Like, there's different things that people take on as jobs. So, like, you assign that value to what a stay-at-home mom is doing.
Right.
And, like, I think sometimes people aren't honest about that yeah, there's people, like, if you were full-time, if both, like, parties were full-time in their careers and you did have kids together, who's going to be doing all that stuff? Like, you're either paying somebody to do it or you have some sort of housekeeper that's doing all the stuff. So if you're not paying those people to do it because there's somebody staying at home, like, that itself is still a service that you can quantify.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Let me go through the different kinds of divorce. I'm going to go through a couple and then I'll get into alimony. So there's a new type of divorce called the no-fault divorce. They just came out with this because for obvious reasons. But no-fault divorce does not assign the fault of the divorce to one spouse and cites no grounds for the divorce other than a breakdown of the marriage. Spouses filing a no-fault divorce usually completes the divorce in an uncontested manner. So anything that's uncontested means that you guys just signed the paperwork, paid the fee, done. You're
so that's
out.
just like mutual break.
That's just a mutual. We just can't tolerate each other anymore, but we don't want to cheat on each other and shit like that. But we acknowledge that
it's done.
It's done. Yeah. So another one is a collaborative divorce, similar to like a mediated divorce, with one major difference. In a mediated divorce, the spouses hire one unbiased mediator to solve the terms of the divorce. In a collaborative divorce, each spouse hires their own attorney to solve the terms of the divorce. That's what you saw in Why Did I Get Married To, where you saw like mediator and their two attorneys kind of going at it with each other. They usually meet with the lawyers privately to discuss what they want, and then all four parties negotiate the terms of the divorce. The process continues until the agreement is reached. That means that you don't got to go to court and do none of that crazy garbage that goes on with a jury of your peers.
Messy.
Psychologists dealing with the kids because they want to see what the kids are feeling like, whether they're suited best with mom or dad. None of that crap goes on. It's just down the middle, 50-50. The other one is a mediated divorce where there's just two of them and a mediator, and that's it. And they hash out the problems. In an uncontested divorce, the couple reaches agreement to settle the divorce issues such as marital property divisions, alimony, child support, child custody. Because they've collaborated on the divorce settlement, they don't need divorce lawyers or a divorce court hearing. So basically, it's just two people just figuring out how to split whatever they need to split, how they're going to deal with the child or children in this scenario. Down the middle, we good. Obviously, a contested divorce means that is your lawyer, spouse's lawyer, judge, and maybe jury. Maybe. Just dealing with that. And then you got to do a family court. In certain states, it could be all in one. A lot of times I hadn't seen that. It's just, that's divorce is one thing. You got to move on to family court and do the other thing.
I mean, this is so much to think about that.
This is like, we can unpack this in another episode, to be honest, but
I mean, I think it highlights that marriage isn't this like, oh my God, I need to get married thing. Like, there's so much shit like you have to think about. A lot of stuff.
And then with the famous word of the day is alimony. And alimony is a grant of spousal support Depends on the facts of the case, such as the disparity between the income and parties and duration of the marriage, the health of the parties. In New York, however, spousal support is rarely granted on a permanent basis, except cases of physical or mental stability or when the parties are elderly, like retirement age, basically. Generally, it's granted for a set period of time so that other party can get back on their feet after the termination of marriage. Basically, it's spousal support, like they want to match, the kind of like the living environment that they were accustomed to for those years until they get back on their feet. There are states out there that do give out lifetime alimony for the time that you've been married. California is one of those states that does do lifetime alimony. And the only way you break a lifetime alimony is if that person who's receiving the alimony gets married again.
That's why Kobe proposed.
Yeah.
Not proposed, but he gave her that big ass rock.
That big ass rock.
I'm sorry, babe.
He's going to pay some serious hefty charges on that one.
She waited to that 10-year mark too.
Right. So it's like 5 years. There's a year, there's a 5 year, there's a 10-year, and then there's 25-year alimony. And New York State's one of those states that does not do that. But there are states in the United States that does hand out lifetime alimony. They don't give a fuck about your age.
It is crazy. This makes me not want to get married. This is like so much shit to think about.
It's a lot of stuff to unpack, and it's just like there's the idea, and when we were talking about it on the barbershop, I was just like, yes, I don't like to think about this part, but there's too many times where you hear, especially with friends, our friends, that divorce can be ugly and methodical. And ugly. Did I say the word ugly again? I want that to get that through your skull. Ugly.
It's like if you're not having these conversations before you're planning the wedding, it's like, what are you doing?
I mean, there's one, and I'm not gonna put his name out there. One of my friends filed a divorce against his wife because he ended up finding out that the child was not his.
Oh,
and he only found that out. I guess
fuck.
He found that out because one of his other friends was telling him that he saw her with another man. And then he was just like, okay. And he knew the guy because he had been introduced to him as a friend.
Oh, she's bold as shit.
Yeah. So at some point, like the child is like 1.5, 2 years old. He swabbed the child's like inside cheek, went to get it sampled or whatever. Turns out the child wasn't his. But here's the sticker. Because his name is on the birth certificate, he has to pay child support.
Damn.
And he's now currently fighting this is in New York, where he's currently fighting this bogus thing because the child's not his. Why is he paying child support on a child that's not his? I guess they came back with, well, the child's been used to you, but
he's like, he's just like, remember that.
When I found this out, this is it. Like, it's not a child that I can take care of. This is not my child.
As hell.
That's a shitty reminder. Like the child's 1.5 years. Kid's not gonna remember that.
Right.
Like, come on. That's it.
So
that's crazy. That's
when
like
I say
Black
divorces
Mirror in real life
get ugly, I mean they can get ugly very quickly. So sorry, it's a very morbid ending to this episode.
No, that's
real life.
It's real life. It's not morbid. It's like you have to just be conscious of all this stuff. Like you have to have these conversations. Like, I mean, parents don't talk to this. Like they don't talk about this stuff with you.
No.
Like, I don't think friends that are like the friends.
But our parents are of a different generation, though, where they think that marriages is just like a thing that's supposed to last.
Yeah.
I mean, we have friends now that like,
I know.
that have lasted shorter than our relationship.
I know, but like,
think about that.
But it's like, where are you getting this like life advice from if you're not looking it up? Like your parents didn't go through this type of situation. Your friends only talk about like the nice and shiny, bright parts of getting married, which is like this nice wedding, and are you coming to my bachelorette party and all this stuff, but like nobody has candid conversations about this.
No, of course not. And
like,
that's the thing,
really
though. Like when
should.
you try to have a candid conversation, especially with the opposite sex, sometimes it can get very hairy really fast.
I think a lot of it is because
when you present facts, it's just like, no, that's messed up.
I think it's a part of like one being holding yourself on to like societal norms.
Right.
But then two is taking it too personally, because you also have to value what you're bringing to the table as an individual. It's not that a he versus she or she versus she or he versus he.
I never try to make it that kind of an argument.
It's nothing like that. It's just that you need to, like, just as much as like you would want to be protected in a marriage, the other person deserves the same thing.
Like there was a thing that Nico said in the last episode that a couple episodes back that I was just like, yeah, like he was like, well, our interaction was this, but while we're out, I don't want this to happen. I don't want you grabbing me by my dick.
Oh,
and then he was just like, okay, well, how about we flip this over? Let's say that we walk in the street and I just randomly just grabbed you by the pussy. How would you feel about that?
Yeah.
And then she was like, okay, I understand where you're coming from. It's only when you put it in terms that, you know, people will understand is when they truly understand where you're coming from. And it's stuff like this, it's kind of hard to. Like, it's hard to wrap your mind around the concept that marriage isn't fun and games. Marriage, a lot of times, is signed by like a secretary of commerce for the state. Yeah. The certificate is.
It's a contract.
It's a contractual agreement and nothing more, nothing less. And if you think about it like that, then stuff starts to unravel. Like, okay, well, what happens when this goes down? Or what happens when that goes down?
And it's such a big thing rooted in conversation and communication. And I think more people should talk about it even before they're at a stage where they're about to get married, because everybody's going to have a different point of view. And you have to think about, how do you value yourself? Like, honestly, do you want to be the stay-at-home mom? If you are, like, you're not going to have future earnings.
Right.
You need to account for that in some way.
Yep.
Or are you going to be the career-oriented person that, you know, you're not going to leave your career and you see yourself making so much more? How do you account for that?
Right.
So, I mean, it's tough conversations, but they need to be had. Otherwise, you just get mess and more mess.
Get fucking ran over.
Oh, yeah. And it does. It happens. Oh, and by the way, for all you guys who are really interested to know, like, if me and Lena D were married, Lena D would actually be paying the alimony. Let's just put it that way. As much as I make, Lena D does actually make more than I do. And that's actually saying a lot. So just, I'm putting that into the context of this conversation. So, yeah. Peace out, Girl Scouts. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let us know what you think about today's episode. Just hit us up on our Contact Us form at nofreedrinks.com. Or if you're lazy like me, which is all the time, you can hit us up at nofreedrinks@gmail.com.
And that was our episode today. Thanks for coming. I hope it was good for you too. This is Lena D. Kisses.
This is Wesley. Peace out, Girl Scouts.
This is Brock. Make love, not babies.